Hello students. This last video for the October 29th remote session, where we're dealing with network analytics, will focus on the third sort of solution or analytical method that you use for network analyst that's called closest distance, or sorry, closest facility. If you recall, the last few videos have ranged the gamut from building these network data sets, these rules of the road, to running various analytical measures like routes and service areas. Well, the last one that we'll do if you come here to Network Analyst is here called Closest Facility. Now, I've already opened it, learning from previous videos for it not to take too long. But if you click Closest Facility, you'll get something that pops up like this: facilities, incidents, and then the other stuff. Closest facility really takes a series of what they call incidents. Let's say them maybe origin points. And it tries to find for each of those what the closest facility is. So it'll try to measure for the red and for this red, which facility are they closest to, and then of course, more importantly, the route you would take to get there. So it's a really cool way when you have these multiple inputs and you want to assess what's closest to one of them or all of them, you'd run a closest facility. So I've loaded in these sort of RP crime. I think that's going to be a good example if you want to use that. I originally attempted to use the to whom I'm closest, but I think RP crime actually demonstrates what I want to show a little better. So load in RP crime. I changed the symbology to be something different just so I don't get lost. And then I'll come over to the closest facility layer, make sure I have it selected. That's how it shows up. Slightly different here, right? It's going to want to have facilities and incidents, right? Incidents is where you're measuring your distance sort of from. They're the origin points, and facilities is what you're trying to see closest, right? So if my incidents are the crime points, the RP crime, then my facilities will be the delis. And so each RP crime point will try to measure and find the closest facility to it. So I'll say import incidents first. I want them to be the RP crimes. Good thing here to have is that the name field, you want to make that something that can easily tie back to identify the incident. So I'll maybe make it that sort of sort ID, just so I quickly have a way to connect back to the RP crime data. We'll run it. Got them loaded. You can see that they are the squares now. And then I'll come here and say the facilities, right? The facilities, I'm going to turn them into these purple circles, and I'm going to make them the delis. I'll give them a name field, which is their deli name. Run it. Got my circles, got my squares. So let's come on up here and actually run this. Oops, sorry about that. So I'm going to want a couple things. Is really here is where you actually define the analytics. First thing is let's set the settings. We've seen this before. Maybe let's start with length. I want to find sort of the shortest distance. Facilities, just meaning how many facilities do I want to find for each incident. So you could find the two closest, the three. That's a kind of neat thing, but let's start it simple with one. And then, of course, this, again, matters most if you have used something like one-way. So if you built the network analyst layer from desktop, you'll have a towards or away facility. Doesn't matter for us now. So again, we've got one facility. Our travel setting that we're using is length, and we're going to run it, and it's going to draw two lines, right? One line from this circle, or this square to the nearest circle, and one from this to this. And it's fairly obvious, right? They'll connect to this one and this one, but still a cool process, and you'll get to see sort of a line for each that is drawn. There we go. Closest facility. You are closest to me, right? And we can even see that when we open the attribute table of this route. tells you about each line, right? This line, I'm heading from the facility ID is Max Deli and the incident ID is 1, right? So I'm the 1 incident ID and I'm headed towards sort of the facility, which is Max Deli, and this one is Shays Deli. So you can actually sort of see the connections in the attribute table. But again, just like all the other techniques and skills we learned, this is sensitive to the mechanism that we use to define closest facility. Like, what if we actually deprioritized crime? Now, maybe it wouldn't work. Maybe this would still be closer. But given the intensity of crime, would this actually feel like that is a closer point to get to? Maybe, or would it just sort of change its route and try to avoid most of the crime and go around? Same thing with this. Would this still be closest to that, but maybe find a route like this to go around the crime? If I loaded that sort of abstract processing cost, which we have called crime cost. Run. And there we go, still the closest, right? Still for this one, it says I'm willing to take the amount of crime that I would have to endure to get to you. Even though it's a little bit, it's not a ton, I'll still go straight. But you see this one sort of made the change, right? It went around sort of this, said you're still closest, but the route I have to take to deprioritize the crime is to go that way. So that's closest facility, right? A totally different thing where it takes an incident, right? An origin point, and finds the area that's closest to it and then shows you the line you have to draw.